Ilara Voss had always loved old things. She liked the smell of dust and paper, the quiet of a museum after closing time, and the way broken objects still had a story to tell if someone took the time to listen. She worked as an archivist, cleaning and studying ancient items before they went on display. Most days were calm and simple, but the day the old sword arrived was different from every other day of her life. A private collector had found a sealed stone chamber under an old quarry. Inside, there was only one object: a broken sword, rusted and cracked, but strangely warm to the touch. The collector sent it to Ilara because she was known for her careful and patient work. She did not know that this single object would change everything she believed about herself. She placed the sword on her work table that evening, long after the other staff had gone home. The metal looked ordinary at first, dark and pitted with age, but when she lifted it gently to examine the broken edge, a sharp pain shot through her hand, like a small spark of electricity. She gasped and almost dropped it. For a moment, the room around her seemed to disappear. She saw a tall man standing in a grand hall, wearing armor, with people kneeling before him. She heard shouting, then a flash of betrayal in someone's eyes she could not see clearly. Just as quickly as it came, the vision vanished, and she found herself sitting on the floor, her hand still tingling. She told herself it was tiredness. She had been working too many late nights. She wrapped the sword carefully and locked it in the secure cabinet before going home, but she could not stop thinking about what she had seen. That night, she could not sleep. Near midnight, she heard a strange sound coming from the lab down the hall of her apartment building, where she sometimes brought small items home to study. She had forgotten to lock the sword in the office that day and had brought it home by mistake, planning to study it more closely. The broken blade now sat in a soft cloth on her kitchen table, and it was glowing faintly. She walked toward it slowly, her heart pounding. The glow grew brighter, and then, without any warning, light spread across the room, and a man appeared, standing where the sword had been. He was tall, with broad shoulders, dark hair, and sharp eyes that looked like they had seen too many centuries pass. He looked down at his own hands, as if surprised they were solid again. Ilara backed away, knocking over a chair. The man turned to her at once, and his expression softened, though his eyes were still intense. "You are the one," he said quietly. "I can feel it. Your blood is the key." "Who? What are you?" Ilara whispered, gripping the edge of the table. "My name is Kael," he said. "I was once called the Alpha King. I have been trapped inside that blade for 3,000 years. Ilara almost laughed from fear and disbelief, but something about the way he spoke, calm and certain, made her believe him more than she wanted to. She asked him to explain, and slowly, sitting across from her at the kitchen table like two strangers sharing tea, he told her his story. Long ago, Kael had ruled the strongest pack in his land. He was loved by his people, but his own beta, a man he trusted like a brother, wanted the throne for himself. On the night before Kael's coronation, his beta worked with a witch to trap him. The witch's curse should have killed him, but something unexpected happened. Instead of dying, Kael's spirit became bound to his own sword. His body was buried, broken and forgotten, and his spirit remained locked inside the blade, fully aware, watching centuries pass, without being able to speak, move, or change anything. "Why now?" Ilara asked. "Why am I the one who woke you?" Kael studied her carefully. The curse said only one person could break it. Someone from my original bloodline, the family the witch tried to erase. Your blood called to the blade the moment you touched it. Ilara shook her head. "I don't have any family. I grew up in foster homes. I don't even know where I came from." "Then perhaps," Kael said gently, "you are about to learn." In the days that followed, Ilara tried to keep her normal life going, while hiding an ancient king in her small apartment. It was not easy. Kael did not understand telephones, traffic lights, or refrigerators. He was used to giving orders, not asking permission, and he found the modern world both strange and frustrating. Ilara found herself constantly explaining simple things, like how to use a microwave, or why he could not simply walk into a shop and take whatever he wanted. Despite the chaos, something else was growing between them. When Kael tried to fix her broken kitchen chair using nothing but his hands and quiet determination, She found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. When she sat with him at night and explained the modern world patiently, instead of laughing at his confusion, he watched her like she was the most fascinating person he had ever known. She also discovered something stranger. If she walked too far from the broken pieces of the sword, which Kael still needed nearby, a sharp pain twisted through her chest, as if something invisible pulled them back together. They were bound, whether they wanted to be or not. One evening, while Ilara worked late at the museum, a woman with pale eyes and silver-streaked hair appeared at her office door. She introduced herself as Mira, and she said she needed to speak with Ilara about the sword urgently. "You don't know what you have woken," Mira said, "and you don't know what it means for you." Ilara's first instinct was to call security, but something about Mira's serious expression made her listen instead. Mira explained that her own family had played a part in Kael's curse long ago. Her ancestor was the witch who had cast the original spell, though she had not wanted to kill Kael completely. She had built one small escape into the curse, if the bloodline bearer chose, freely and without force, to bond completely with Kael, the curse would break forever. But if that bond was not completed before the next full moon, Kael would fade back into the metal, this time with no way out, ever again. "There's something else," Mira added quietly. "There is a man named Demir Voss. He leads one of the strongest packs in this city now. His family is the same bloodline as the Beta, who betrayed Kael long ago. If he learns the king has returned, he will do everything he can to stop you both, because Kael's return threatens everything his family stole." Ilara felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. She was no longer simply a quiet archivist with an unusual problem. She was now part of a story that stretched back 3,000 years, with a king's freedom and possibly her own safety depending on a decision only she could make. She returned home that night and told Kael everything. He listened in silence, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. "I will not force this bond on you," he said finally. "I have lived 3,000 years as a prisoner. I refuse to make you one as well." "But if I don't choose," Ilara said softly, "you disappear forever." "Then that may be the price," Kael said. "I would rather fade than make you feel trapped beside me." His words surprised her more than anything else he had said since appearing in her kitchen. A king who had once commanded armies was now willing to vanish forever rather than force her hand. It was in that quiet moment, more than any vision or curse, that Ilara began to understand what she truly felt for him. It was not fear anymore. It was something deeper, something she had never let herself feel for anyone before, because she had spent her whole life keeping people at a careful distance. But before she could fully decide, trouble found them first. 3 nights later, on the evening before the full moon, a group of strangers broke into Ilara's apartment, while she and Kael were preparing to leave for a safer location Mira had suggested. The strangers worked for Demir, and their orders were simple: destroy the remaining pieces of the broken sword, and make sure no one was left to interfere. Kael fought to protect Ilara with everything he had, but 3,000 years, trapped in metal, had left him weaker than he used to be, and the curse still limited his full strength until the bond was complete. One of the attackers raised a weapon toward Kael as he struggled to hold the others back, and Ilara, without thinking, threw herself between them. In that single heartbeat, with fear and love mixing together inside her, she made her choice. She reached for Kael's hand and spoke the words Mira had taught her earlier that day, words meant to complete the bond freely and without force. Light burst from the broken sword fragments on the table behind them, wrapping around both of them like a warm wind. When the light faded, Kael stood taller, stronger, fully restored for the first time in 3,000 years. The attackers, stunned by the sudden surge of power, hesitated just long enough for Kael to push them back and force them to retreat into the night. Ilara, breathless and shaking, looked up at him. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I am free," Kael said quietly, looking at his own hands as if seeing them clearly for the first time in centuries. "Because of you." The following days were not simple ones. Word spread quickly through the supernatural community that the original Alpha King had returned, fully restored, and no longer cursed. Demir, fearing the loss of everything his family had built on a stolen throne, tried to gather support against Kael, claiming he was dangerous and unstable after so long trapped away from the world. But Kael did not respond with anger or revenge, as many expected from an ancient king wronged so deeply. Instead, he called for a public gathering of pack leaders and calmly told the full story of his betrayal, supported by Mira, who finally revealed the truth her family had hidden for generations. The other leaders, hearing the evidence and seeing Kael's calm, fair approach, slowly turned away from Demir's claims. Without their support, Demir's stolen authority crumbled, and he was left with nothing but the consequences of choices made long before he was born. In the weeks that followed, life slowly found a new kind of normal for Elara. She was no longer simply an archivist with a quiet, lonely life. She stood beside a king who had waited 3,000 years, not for power, not for revenge, but for the chance to know what it felt like to be chosen freely by someone. One evening, as the sun set gently over the city, Elara and Kael stood together near the museum where everything had begun. The broken sword, now just a quiet piece of history, rested safely behind glass, no longer a prison, simply a reminder of how far they had come. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Elara asked him. "The throne, the armies, the world you knew?" Kael looked at her for a long moment, his expression soft in a way few people had ever seen from him. "I spent 3,000 years missing a world that no longer exists," he said. "I would rather build a new one with you than return to an old one without you." Elara smiled, feeling, for the first time in her life, that she truly belonged somewhere. Not because of an ancient curse, not because of bloodlines or fate, but because she had chosen this, fully and freely, just as Kael had chosen to wait 3,000 years for the chance to be chosen. And as the city lights began to glow around them, the story that started with a broken sword and a quiet archivist finally found its peaceful ending, not with a battle won by force, but with a bond formed by trust, patience, and a love that had outlasted time itself.